Strip away every pot, every pan, every piece of metal cookware from your kitchen right now. No frying pan. No saucepan. No oven tray. Just fire, rock, and whatever you can find lying on the ground. Now try to cook dinner. It sounds almost impossible. And yet, for the vast majority of human history, this wasn't a hypothetical, it was simply how every single meal got made. Pots and pans, the objects sitting in your kitchen cabinet without a second thought, are actually one of the newest tools in the entire story of human cooking. So the real question is, if humans didn't have containers to cook in, how did they cook anything at all? The answer starts even before cooking itself existed. For an enormous stretch of early human history, food wasn't cooked. It was eaten raw, torn straight off a carcass or pulled directly from the ground. And this created a hidden problem most people never think about. Raw meat and raw plants are hard to digest. The body has to work harder, extract fewer calories, and spend far more energy just breaking food down. There was another problem too, one that had nothing to do with taste. Raw meat carried parasites and bacteria that could sicken or kill. Every meal was, in a very real sense, a small gamble. Then something changed, something that didn't just feed humans. Some researchers believe it may have reshaped the human brain itself. Fire. Not decoration, not warmth, cooking. Once early humans began deliberately applying fire to food, something remarkable happened. Cooking breaks down tough fibers and proteins before they ever reach your stomach, meaning the body suddenly had to spend far less energy digesting the exact same meal. It also killed off many of the parasites and pathogens hiding inside raw meat, quietly making food safer without anyone understanding why. Some researchers, most notably primatologist Richard Wrangham, argue this single shift, softer, more digestible, calorie-dense cooked food, may have freed up enough biological energy to fuel the growth of a larger, more energy-hungry human brain. Wrangham's theory points to something striking. The timeline of brain growth in early humans lines up suspiciously well with the timeline of controlled fire use. At sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where burned bone and ash deposits suggest fire was being used and managed roughly 1 million years ago. If that theory holds, cooking wasn't just a convenience. It may have been one of the quiet engines behind human intelligence itself. But here's the problem hiding inside that discovery. Fire alone doesn't cook a whole animal evenly. Direct flame chars the outside while leaving the inside raw and dangerous. Early humans needed a way to control that heat, not just create it. And the very first solution was almost embarrassingly simple. Skewer it and hold it over the flame, spit roasting. Meat pierced on a sharpened branch and rotated slowly above open fire solved the evenness problem almost immediately. Fat dripped away instead of pooling and burning. Heat reached the meat from a controlled distance instead of direct contact. This single method, refined only slightly, stayed in use for tens of thousands of years. And honestly, it's still exactly how you'd cook meat over a campfire today. There was a second use for fire that had nothing to do with meat at all, and it involves one of the most overlooked food sources in early human history: bone marrow. Cracking open a heated bone made the marrow inside easier to access and more calorie-dense once warmed, and some researchers believe access to this fat-rich resource, made easier by fire, played its own role in supporting early human survival through lean seasons. But roasting only worked for certain foods. Vegetables, grains, tougher cuts of meat, none of that responded well to an open flame. Humans needed heat that surrounded food completely, not just scorched one side of it. So the ground itself became the next tool. Humans began digging pits directly into the earth, lining them with hot stones, and burying food inside, sealed under leaves, bark, or soil to trap heat and steam. This wasn't crude. It was remarkably effective, and versions of it appeared independently, on opposite sides of the planet, with almost no contact between the cultures using them. In Polynesia, communities built the umu, and later the closely related hangi and imu, earth ovens where volcanic stones were heated for hours, food wrapped in leaves was placed directly on top, and the entire pit was sealed and left to slow cook using nothing but retained stone heat. In parts of North America, similar earth ovens, sometimes used for hours or even overnight, turned tough roots and meat into tender, fully cooked meals using the exact same core idea. Heated rock plus sealed earth equals a slow, even oven, with no container required at all. And in parts of the Middle East and North Africa, a related but distinct method developed, an early clay-walled pit oven, essentially a precursor to what would eventually become the tandoor, where a fire built inside a clay-lined hole created intense, retained heat perfect for baking flatbreads directly against the hot inner walls. 3 regions, thousands of miles apart, all discovered that heat trapped inside earth or clay, sealed correctly, could function as an oven, long before anyone had a container to put inside one. But earth ovens solved roasting and baking. They didn't solve something else entirely: boiling. And boiling turned out to be one of the hardest cooking problems to crack without a container that could actually hold liquid over direct heat. This is where the story takes a genuinely strange turn. Without clay pots, without metal, how do you boil water at all? The answer, discovered independently by multiple cultures around the world, was almost unbelievable in its simplicity. Heat rocks in a fire until they're extremely hot, then drop them directly into water. Stone boiling used tightly woven baskets, wooden troughs, hollowed logs, or even watertight leather pouches, filled with water or broth, completely unable to sit directly over flame without burning through instantly. Instead, red-hot stones, pulled straight from the fire with wooden tongs, were dropped in one by one, transferring their heat directly into the liquid until it actually reached a full boil. Some Native American communities used this exact method for cooking stews inside tightly woven, watertight baskets, vessels that would have burned instantly over open flame, but worked perfectly with heated stones doing the work instead. And in an even stranger twist, some cultures used the animal itself as the cooking vessel. Cleaned animal stomachs and hides, naturally watertight, were filled with meat, blood, and liquid, then cooked using the same heated stone method. This technique is actually believed to be the ancient origin of dishes still eaten today, including early versions of haggis in Scotland, meat and offal cooked directly inside a sealed stomach lining, long before metal cookware ever existed. The container wasn't invented. It was grown, walking around on four legs, long before anyone shaped clay into a bowl. Meanwhile, in East Asia, an entirely different cooking method was developing, one built around a material growing right outside the door: bamboo. Sections of bamboo, naturally hollow and surprisingly heat-resistant for short periods, were filled with rice, water, or meat, sealed at one end, and placed directly into fire or hot coals. The bamboo itself became a disposable, single-use cooking vessel, and layered bamboo tubes stacked over boiling water also gave rise to early steaming methods, a technique that never fully disappeared and still directly influences bamboo steamers used in kitchens across Asia today. Alongside cooking, another problem quietly demanded its own solutions: keeping food edible after it was cooked, especially through seasons when fresh food simply wasn't available. Smoking meat over a low, steady fire didn't just add flavor, it drew out moisture and created a natural barrier against bacteria, allowing meat to last for weeks or months instead of days. Salt, where available, worked alongside smoking to pull moisture out even further. And in many cultures, grain-based dough was pressed flat and baked directly in hot ashes, producing simple ash cakes, one of the earliest forms of bread, made entirely without a single baking vessel of any kind. At this point, look at what humans had actually built, entirely without pottery, roasting over open flame, sealed earth and clay ovens using retained heat, boiling using rocks dropped into watertight containers made from baskets, wood, leather, or literal animal stomachs, steaming using hollow bamboo, smoking, salting, and ash baking for preservation in bread. Every major cooking method we still use today, roasting, baking, boiling, steaming, and even preserving, already existed long before a single piece of pottery had ever been fired. So if all of that already worked, why did pottery matter at all? The answer comes down to one word: efficiency. Stone boiling worked, but it was slow, and it required constantly cycling stones in and out of a fire, losing heat with every exchange. Earth ovens worked, but they took hours of preparation and couldn't be reused quickly. Humans had solved cooking. They hadn't solved convenience, and the breakthrough, when it finally arrived, came earlier than almost anyone expected. The oldest known pottery in the world wasn't discovered in the Middle East, where farming first began. It was found in Xianrending Cave in China, dating back roughly 20,000 years, thousands of years before agriculture existed anywhere on the planet. That timing breaks the assumption most people naturally make, that pottery came from farmers needing to store grain. It didn't. It came first, from hunter-gatherers, and evidence strongly suggests its original purpose wasn't storage at all. It was cooking soup. In Japan, some of the earliest Jomon pottery, dating back over 16,000 years, shows charring and residue patterns consistent with direct use over fire, believed to have been used for boiling fish and plant stews directly, something no basket, hide, or bamboo tube could safely do without the constant stone heating workaround. For the first time in human history, you could put a container directly over fire, and it wouldn't burn, crack, or leak. Boiling stopped being a multi-step process involving heated rocks and constant attention, and became as simple as placing a vessel over flame and walking away. This one invention quietly rewired daily life. Food could simmer for hours unattended. Tough grains and beans, nearly impossible to prepare using roasting or stone boiling, became genuinely edible for the first time. Some researchers even connect the spread of pottery to improvements in nutrition and population growth in the regions where it appeared. And from that first fired clay vessel, the evolution runs in a fairly direct line: thicker ceramic cookware, early metal cooking vessels in Bronze Age civilizations, cast iron pans by the medieval period, and eventually the lightweight, mass-produced pots and pans sitting in kitchens everywhere today. Stop and compare these two realities for a second. An early human, roasting meat on a sharpened stick, or dropping fire-heated stones one by one into a leather pouch, watching carefully, timing everything by instinct and experience passed down for generations. Today, you set a pot on a stove, turn a dial, and walk away without a second thought. The core problem never actually changed across that entire span of time. How do you apply controlled heat to food safely and evenly? What changed was every layer humans built to solve it. Fire, skewers, sealed earth and clay, heated stones, animal stomachs, hollow bamboo, smoke and salt, and finally, a single container that could sit directly over flame without falling apart. Maybe that's the real thread running through this story. Long before there was ever a container built specifically for cooking, humans had already figured out how to cook almost anything, using nothing but fire, rock, and whatever the world happened to hand them. If you found it interesting how humans solved roasting, baking, boiling, steaming, and preserving long before a single pot ever existed, watch the next video, where we trace how humans went from carrying water by hand to indoor plumbing.